She stole every man I loved, so I gave her one that stole her life. Having a mother who got pregnant at 18 meant I grew up with a best friend who happened to look like a supermodel and had the relationship ethics of a praying mantis. When I started dating my first boyfriend Ezra, I was super excited to introduce him to my mother. But when I brought him home, Mom opened the door wearing her tightest red dress and introduced herself as my sister. Then she laughed when I corrected it to mother and spent the entire dinner flirting with Ezra. I thought whatever and decided to chalk it up to her being weird. But then 2 days later, Ezra texted me saying, "Sorry, I slept with your mother." It felt like all the energy from my body had disappeared. When I confronted my mom, she said it was just a one-time mistake and would never happen again, so I believed her. 2 years later, I started dating Stefan from my office. When I brought him to my cousin's wedding, Mom monopolized him all night with her hand on his knee. She laughed when I told her to stop and said she was just having fun. So once again, I let it go. And once again, she stole him. On our anniversary, I came home early with champagne in my hands, but found my mother in our bed sitting on top of Stefan. "Oh honey, I was just testing him for you. Wouldn't you rather know now than after marriage?" she said, and I ran away. I moved 2 hours away and became scared of dating, but that's when I met Danny. He drew hearts in my latte foam and left poetry on my pillow every Sunday morning. We built a quiet life in our tiny apartment where my mother had never set foot. I posted no couple photos and made Danny promise to keep our relationship off social media. But at our anniversary dinner, everything collapsed. My mother walked through the door and took Danny's hand before I could warn him. "Hello son, I'm the mom, the premium version of my daughter." That night I shook in bed while Danny promised nothing would happen. Then 2 months later, I came home early from work and my heart dropped. My mother's car was in our driveway. I walked inside with heavy footsteps and heard them both through our bedroom door. "She'll never love you like I can, Danny." The bed creaked rhythmically while he moaned her name. I slammed against the door until wood splintered and barged inside. They didn't even scramble apart. They froze mid-act, tangled in our sheets. She pulled his Yankees jersey down to cover herself while Danny scrambled for a pillow. "This isn't what it looks like," Danny said. My mother just smiled. "Honey, you should thank me. Better you find out now than after marriage." Something inside me shattered completely. I turned and walked out as Danny called my name, my mother's laughter following me down the stairs. I couldn't eat for days and lived on my bathroom floor until my best friend found me and dragged me to her therapy group, where a woman passed around photos of a guy named Callahan, someone who had destroyed her elderly mother through romance fraud. That night, I lay awake Googling him and found his profile on investment forums trolling for new victims. Almost in a trance, I created a fake account and messaged him talking about a potential partnership. And as I thought about my mother's weakness for younger men who belong to others, something crystallized in my mind. We met at Starbucks, where he looked exactly like the kind of man who'd make middle-aged women stupid. I invited him as a date to my mother's birthday party, and he agreed as soon as I mentioned how big her inherited house was. I walked into the party holding Callahan's arm, and Mom's eyes started sparkling when she saw us. "This is Callahan, my financial advisor." She shook his hand with her French tips digging in. Callahan complimented her dress, saying she looked too young to have a grown daughter. They spent dinner talking about art investments while her hand found his arm repeatedly. Within a week, he was fixing her computer, and by week 3, he'd already moved in. She posted photos captioned, "Finally found a real man." That's when it started. First, my grandmother's pearl necklace disappeared from the house. "I'm sure Callahan is just having it cleaned," she explained. Then Dad's Rolex collection vanished. Then she refinanced the entire house twice because Callahan convinced her they needed capital for Costa Rica ventures. When her best friend warned her about a scam, Mom screamed, "You're all jealous," and went back to her perfect boyfriend. By month 6, every bank account belonging to her showed 0. She called me one day sobbing, "Callahan's gone. He's not answering. How could someone just take everything and disappear?" I let the silence stretch before speaking. "Now you know how it feels," she gasped. "What did you just say?" I laughed, actually laughed. "You heard me." Her voice turned venomous. "You did this. You brought him to my party. I kept my voice steady, just like you came to my anniversary dinner, to my cousin's wedding, to my Thanksgiving." The line went dead, but she appeared at my apartment a few minutes later, pounding on my door. "You knew what he was," she screamed. "You set me up." I spoke through the door. "You mean just like you knew what you were doing with Ezra, Stefan, and Danny?" Her fists stopped pounding. "That's different. I was testing them for you." My voice came out ice cold. "And I'm sure you were testing Danny for me too. But the difference was that he failed for both of us, not just me." I watched through the people as she collapsed in my hallway, finally living my pain. She lives in a roadside motel now, facing eviction, and telling people how her vindictive daughter took everything from her.